Can you truly rent an entire city and silence its outrage? That is the explosive question swirling around Venice today, as the city's winding canals and historic piazzas become the backdrop to one of the most controversial celebrations in recent memory. Rumors of a magnificent wedding for Jeff Bezos, accompanied by some of the most recognizable celebrities on the planet, have ignited a deep, simmering tension over wealth, power, and the uncertain fate of a fabled city. Is this sumptuous display an irresistible spectacle, or a glaring reminder of the distance between global billionaires and those who call Venice home every day? In this episode, we dive headlong into the whirlwind of headlines, protests, and unspoken truths behind one of the most talked about weddings in recent times. What is really happening behind the elegant facades of Venice? And why have so many locals come together to say no space for Bezos? Today, we uncover the roots of Venetian anger, unravel the sentiment that has united environmentalists, students, and housing activists in an unprecedented coalition, and witness the spectacle of superstars gliding up the Grand Canal, even as protest banners decorate the city's most iconic landmarks. In this narrative, we will lay bare the gritty details that the pristine wedding photos might not show. The local frustration with rental prices skyrocketing beyond reach, the fury over tax breaks reportedly carved out for corporate giants, and the stinging question of who truly benefits when a city is paraded across the global stage as a private playground for the ultra-wealthy. In this episode, we will explore key concerns fueling the anger. Does hosting a high-profile wedding overshadow grassroots movements fighting for Venice's survival? Are the criticisms pointed at Jeff Bezos merely scapegoating a single billionaire, or are they part of a wider discontent with how major cities worldwide are grappling with inequality and tourism overload? And finally, how do local authorities defend this star-studded affair, insisting it is an honor for Venice, while the streets surge with demonstrators eager to reclaim their city's identity? Get ready, because we are about to navigate canal after canal of complexity, deciphering each twist as we go. The stage is set with a daunting scenario. Venetian activists are not only carrying banners or chanting slogans, they have threatened to block entire water passages in protest. That is right. In a city famed for its gondolas, elaborate masked carnivals, and labyrinthine waterways, local groups proposed physically barring entrances to certain canals so that no wedding party, no matter how lavish, could proceed unimpeded. The mere concept of everyday Venetians uniting to disrupt one of the city's most profitable tourist events suggests just how intense the frustration has become. Even though these plans morphed into a different style of protest, a march from the train station, the sense of defiance remains strong, testimony to a deep-rooted skepticism about yet another extravagant affair overshadowing authentic local life. But let us rewind for a moment. Venice has long been an irresistible magnet for star-studded ceremonies. Recall the 2014 wedding of George Clooney and Amal Alamuddin, which drew throngs of well-wishers eager to catch a glimpse of the famous couple. Back then, public sentiment was markedly different. Curiosity, excitement, and even pride in seeing Venice sparkle under international spotlights. So, why is this wedding rousing a very different chorus of resentment? The answer lies, many say, in the difference between a beloved Hollywood actor and a billionaire who, in the eyes of some activists, represents the forces of inequality, questionable labor conditions, and political alliances that clash with local values. This wedding features a power couple who, to critics, symbolizes an encroaching tide of corporate might, overshadowing the city's defender spirit. Central to the uproar is the slogan, "No space for Bezos," a phrase that resonates across various protest banners seen draped on graceful Venetian bridges or fluttering from balconies. The phrase plays on layers of meaning: the limited physical space of a city perched precariously on waterways, the metaphorical space in the hearts and minds of residents who feel oppressed by soaring rents and diminishing community resources, and even referencing the bride's notable journey into space. Local activists want to highlight their sense that Venice, already buckling under relentless waves of mass tourism, cannot accommodate more disregard for its fragile ecosystem and for the human cost that saturates its neighborhoods. But the story does not end with local ire alone. Global activists have joined in, brought together by a common disillusionment with the perceived privileges of tech oligarchs. A British group that calls itself Everyone Hates Elon, originally launched to protest another tech billionaire's methods of doing business, has found kindred spirits among Venetian demonstrators. Together, they created a spectacle that even the famed Piazza San Marco could scarcely ignore. They rolled out an enormous banner proclaiming, "If you can rent Venice for your wedding, you can pay more tax," brandishing a massive caricature of Jeff Bezos' face. Tourist cameras flashed, bystanders gawked, before local police confiscated the banner. But the moment was already immortalized, saturating social media streams and fueling a flurry of escalating indignation. On the official side, the city council and Venice's mayor, Luigi Brugnaro, have vigorously defended the wedding as an undeniable boon to Venice's global reputation. Venetian leadership has insisted that the high-profile event will bolster tourism revenues, create a swirl of media buzz, and lend fresh glamour to a city that thrives on worldwide fascination. Indigenous Venetian voices, however, counter that this publicity does not translate into meaningful assistance for the genuine crisis faced by longtime residents. In the eyes of these critics, the wedding is yet another fleeting spectacle, overshadowing the deeper structural issues plaguing the city. There is, of course, an economic dimension to these debates that might otherwise be overlooked by the glitz. Protesting organizations argue that while celebrity nuptials flood hotels and restaurants with instant business, they do not address Venice's long-term challenges. Many young Venetians struggle to find affordable apartments, and a wave of property owners reportedly prefer short-term rentals to wealthy foreign visitors over offering stable leases to locals. Year upon year, fewer Venetians can stay in the city of their birth. Housing advocates blame this unbridled tourism churn for transforming Venice into a pastel postcard, a lavish theme park for day trippers and glamorous wedding guests, rather than a living, breathing community. That is why, for critics, the marriage of the man behind one of the largest online retail empires is such a potent symbol. Some see in it an embodiment of the same forces that keep local wages comparatively low, that push small businesses out of central neighborhoods, and that lure city officials to embrace revenue streams over protecting community well-being. When Amazon is invoked, certain activists do not just see an e-commerce giant, they see precarious working conditions in distribution warehouses, a corporate behemoth known for complex tax practices across international borders, and alliances with political figures who do not hold Venice's best interests at heart. The protests, therefore, go beyond a particular wedding day. They open a bigger conversation about shared priorities in an increasingly globalized world. Meanwhile, the city's own political and environmental narrative heightens the sense of urgency. Venice, fragile as it is, grapples with rising tides and a precariously receding population. Environmental groups have historically banded together to protest gargantuan cruise ships that used to make their way through the Giudecca Canal, overshadowing centuries-old buildings. That movement, led by figures like Tommaso Cacciari, helped secure a major victory in banning large vessels from central Venice. But the city remains besieged by floods and the monumental challenge of balancing tourism with ecological stewardship. And the prospect of a flamboyant wedding entourage buzzing around in sleek water taxis and lavish private parties fosters a sense that some have the power to ignore these urgent dilemmas entirely. In what universe do you get to blockade entire canals, some might wonder. But that was the very tactic originally proposed by local collectives, even though it was scaled back in the face of reported logistical hurdles and concerns about direct confrontation. Instead, the activists took the stance that their demonstration could be more powerful if they convinced local authorities to effectively relocate the wedding festivities to the Arsenale, an area known for its historical shipyards, partly removed from Venice's most congested corridors. They regarded that shift as a sign of progress. By making the planners scramble for alternative venues, the activists felt they had shown their collective muscle. Federica Toninello, associated with a local social housing assembly, has emerged as a spokesperson for a large slice of Venetians who refuse to accept the normalization of such extravagant displays while residents struggle to make ends meet. Appearing in local media interviews, she has stressed that the protest is energetic but free from violence, with a festival-like spirit designed to show what a vibrant, resident-friendly Venice could look like. She and other organizers emphasize that they share the city's love of pageantry and celebration, but they argue that, when feasts are orchestrated by global billionaires on a private whim, they overshadow the day-to-day struggles faced by countless locals. The question of tax breaks also looms large. Many protest banners specifically call out perceived inequalities in the current tax system. While official statements deflect these allegations, their repeated inclusion in demonstrations attempts to shine a light on how the wealthy, with an army of accountants and advantageous legislation, might dodge responsibilities that typical Venetians cannot. By connecting the wedding to systemic financial inequities, activists aim to galvanize not just hardcore protesters, but also moderate citizens who see tangible effects of lopsided finances in their day-to-day experiences, including rising household costs, public services in disrepair, and limited job opportunities. Then, there is also the matter of the bride, Lauren Sanchez, whose brief journey to the edges of Earth's atmosphere via a private space venture prompted yet another note of irony for protesters. No Space for Bezos does more than highlight Venice's physical limitations. It alludes to Ms. Sanchez's headline-making flight and the intersection of space tourism with earthly inequality. The question becomes, if one can glimpse the planet from a seat in a private spacecraft, can one also see the plight of those who have been pushed to society's margins? Here is something else to stir the pot. Greenpeace, known worldwide for confronting environmental offenses, weighed in on the protests, standing side by side with local organizations. Their presence extended the focus beyond purely Venetian matters, suggesting that Jeff Bezos' relationship with the environment and the philanthropic efforts attached to the Bezos Earth Fund are not universally applauded. Although a Venetian Environmental Research Association, Corilla, made the surprising announcement that it had received a significant donation from Bezos' fund, many suspect that such philanthropy does not cancel out the broader concerns about how the city's cultural and socio-economic fabric might bend under the weight of large-scale tourism and the unstoppable forces of global capitalism. All the while, the city's leadership brushes away the controversies, maintaining that it is an honor for Venice to host such an illustrious gathering. The guest list for the wedding reads like a who's who of modern pop culture and power: Mick Jagger, Ivanka Trump, Oprah Winfrey, Katy Perry, Leonardo DiCaprio, and many more. Some local business owners see the presence of these luminaries as an opportunity, hoping the city's hotels, cafes, and shops stand to gain from the flurry of attention. They note that Venice has effectively been a stage for spectacle ever since its earliest carnivals drew European elites centuries ago. Perhaps, they argue, it is up to modern Venetians to adapt and thrive within this new reality. But for the protesters, pragmatism alone does not cut it. They speak not just of short-term gains, but of the city's long-term survival. Over the past several decades, the population of historic Venice has dropped drastically, leaving entire neighborhoods feeling empty, robbed of their sense of community under the constant churn of visitors. Activists are quick to mention the day tripper tax, an attempt by city authorities to rein in the throngs of tourists. Critics retort that such measures only further the idea that Venice is a pretty carnival where you pay an admission ticket, not a living destination with families, workers, and schools. This wedding, they say, only underscores that notion of Venice as a commodified fantasy land. One cannot separate that tension from the broader global conversation about inequality. Ever since Bezos stepped down from his primary role at Amazon, the public's fascination with his personal life has grown, intensifying scrutiny of his financial dealings, philanthropic interests, and particularly the large sums he invests in space exploration. Some applaud his philanthropic expansions, including the initiative to address climate change. Others suggest that if a billionaire can vacation in space, then there is a moral imperative to redistribute wealth on Earth first. Venice, steeped in centuries of wealth and power dynamics, now exemplifies that uneasy intersection. It all begs the question, is this wedding a turning point for a city that has witnessed countless transformations, from the days of the Doges to modern ballooning tourism? Could the defiance of local groups, newly invigorated by global activism, serve as a precedent for other tourist-dependent metropolises seeking a balance between revenue and community well-being? We watch as protesters line the squares, chanting that Venice is not for sale, confronting city officials who see gala weddings as a crucial part of the city's economy. That conflict plays out in miniature all around the world, as historic towns and iconic landmarks attempt to repurpose themselves in the era of influencer photo shoots and glamorous ceremonies. If you have found yourself gripped by this roller coaster of events, consider giving a quick thumbs up or like. Sometimes, the simplest gesture of support helps keep these issues alive in public discussions, ensuring that the voices of local communities resonate far beyond the day of the event. Meanwhile, The wedding itself marches on, secured in a location more easily defended by private security, away from the small canals that thread through Venice's busiest areas. Reports suggest that the bride and groom have spared no expense in curating a mesmerizing experience for their 200 or so guests, complete with lavish banquets and exclusive tours of centuries-old sites. Even so, the jubilant spirit inside the cloistered venues contrasts sharply with the simmering discontent on the pavements outside. As camera crews hover, searching for glimpses of red carpet arrivals or romantic gondola rides, a parallel story emerges of local Venetian families trying to go about their daily chores in a city that feels less and less their own. Yet, some whisper hopefully that the large donation from the Bezos Earth Fund to Corilla might signal a new partnership, a step toward preserving Venice's fragile environment. Could philanthropy and conscientious tourism blossom side by side under the watchful eyes of environmental watchdogs and local communities? Skeptics caution that charitable gestures do not absolve millionaires of complicity in systemic inequities. But others remain steadfastly pragmatic, pointing out that Venice's best hope for a sustainable future might be forging alliances with those who have significant resources to invest in research and environmental defenses. Whether such synergy can help reimagine the city's course remains to be seen. Shored up on the west side of the city, the protesters convene for a peaceful march, waving banners that declare, "Venice is not a billionaire's playground, housing for residents, not amusements for elites, and no space for Bezos." The mood is tense yet jubilant, a tapestry of energy that merges righteous anger with imaginative flair. Musicians, performance artists, and young activists pass through narrow streets, the echoes of their footsteps merging with the gentle lapping of water beneath stone bridges. Onlookers from balconies watch with curiosity. Some cheer, some remain silent, and a few wave homemade signs of support. "Let them celebrate their big day," one local fisherman shruggingly remarks. "We have to make sure our city remains ours the rest of the time." But is that even possible in an age when so many ancient cities are under relentless pressure to cater to global tourism? People question whether any city, no matter how storied, can withstand the onslaught of commercial interests. With the ratio of actual residents to visitors skewed so dramatically, pockets of Venice risk turning into ephemeral sets, waiting for the next blockbuster wedding or film shoot, rather than a sustainable environment for families. All these threads converge at a single, electrifying flashpoint when protesters approach the Arsenale district. Security is tight, yet the marchers remain resolute. The authorities and event organizers have negotiated routes to ensure the wedding's privacy, but symbolic banners still loom over vantage points. Meanwhile, guests inside the wedding sphere might be unaware of the demonstration taking place just out of sight. Or perhaps they are well aware yet protecting themselves from negativity, focusing on the celebration at hand. That duality of private revelry and public outrage tells us everything we need to know about the modern tension swirling around this event. It is tempting to paint Jeff Bezos as the sole villain in this compelling drama, but just as many point to deeper structural pitfalls. They argue that symptomatic events like this wedding highlight a crisis in how cities define themselves in a globalized economy. If Venice can be rented, so can many heritage sites around the world. The fury unleashed by local activists is not so much about despising celebration, but about demanding a fair share of decision-making power. They do not want to see centuries-old architecture converted exclusively into photo backdrops for wealthy parties, while families are shut out by unaffordable housing and limited opportunity. As the day reaches an emotional high, with boat horns sounding in the distance and the swirl of protest outside, it is a prime moment to reaffirm why these stories matter. If you are eager to stay updated on how global events intersect with local communities, whether in Venice or beyond, consider subscribing for deeper dives in the future. Let us keep the conversation alive and shed light on how these extraordinary gatherings reflect changes in our world. As you might suspect, the wedding eventually ends, the glittering guests depart by private jet or luxury yacht, and Venice returns to its daily flow. But the questions raised do not vanish. Activists remain organized, determined to meet future challenges with renewed vigor. City officials continue touting the success of hosting A-list events, pointing to the short boosts in local revenue, and somewhere, beyond the city's boundaries, a conversation about justice, inequality, and the fate of cultural treasures intensifies. If Venice can spark such powerful debate with one wedding, what might happen if more billionaire celebrations roll in, each one grander than the last. For now, the story of No Space for Bezos concludes with a city simultaneously proud of its world-class allure and wounded by the strains of over-tourism. Protesters vow that the next time a billionaire attempts something of this magnitude, the demonstrations will be even more creative, even more united. Whether change will truly come, no one can say, but the spark has already been lit. One thing is clear: Venice continues to stand at the crossroads of spectacle and substance, balancing precariously between a world enamored of its beauty and a local population fighting to preserve authenticity. The echoes of those chants will linger long after the last star-studded guest has departed, reminding everyone that centuries-old cities are more than a stage for photo opportunities. They are communities with hearts, histories, and futures worth protecting.